Well, thanks everybody for jumping on the Zoom call today. I hope you and your families continue to be safe. It's been a while since we had an opportunity to chat, so looking forward to it. You know, over the last couple of months, I've been so impressed and grateful for how our coaches, staff, and student athletes have responded to the pandemic. Our coaches continue to serve our student athletes by keeping them safe within the protocols established by our medical experts, and our student athletes are engaged in their academic studies, social justice conversations, and training for competition. From President Clements on down, we've been unified in advocating for finding a way for our students to return and to compete. Financially, Clemson Athletics was able to end the 2020 fiscal year financially positive without resorting to drastic measures. This was due to a heavy dose of cost cutting and a great philanthropy from our IPTAY donors. We now face a year of diminished sources of revenue. I'm optimistic about the long-term health of our department, but recognize challenges are ahead. The state's approval of our stadium occupancy plan yesterday will provide some relief, but we must remain diligent in safety practices of wearing face masks, washing hands, keeping distance wherever possible, as circumstances around us continue to change. We remain optimistic about our long-term viability and success, but must understand that we're in a challenging time. We just know that this year is going to be different. Before I take questions, I want to publicly thank our doctors, our sports medicine teams for all the work that they've put in, our ACC Medical Advisory Group, certainly IPTAY, our Board of Trustees, and President Clements. Finally, our coaches and staff have worked tirelessly to get ready for this fall and to keep our students safe. As we sit on the call today, I'm confident that we can continue to compete in all of our sports this year. So again, thanks for coming on board, and I'm open for some questions.
Hey, good morning, Dan. This is David Hood with TigerNet. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, you too, David. Good morning.
Good morning. In regards to tailgating, just some of the thought processes behind making that decision about not really allowing a tailgating. And then somebody on social media hit me back last night and said, well, how are they going to stop me? Are they going to arrest me if I show up to tailgate? Can you just kind of address how you plan to mitigate some of that?
Sure. Well, first of all, the idea of how all of the things that we've put out yesterday through the plan with the state and some information that's going out to our season ticket holders today is the result of about 4 months worth of work as it relates to our game operations and our IPTAY staff. We engaged AECOM, one of our architectural partners. We've had dialogue with medical experts. We've had dialogue with our campus safety and security folks. So the result of all of those conversations over that time period really came forward yesterday in the announcement of that plan. As it relates specifically to tailgating, it really is one of those things where we need to protect the environment of campus. We have students who will be here once we have our first opening game. We want our students to be able to have a safe environment on campus. We don't want to athletics be the cause for any issues associated with the potential closure of campus by having so many people out and about in a tailgating environment. So that's why we've asked our fans, the people who are going to have the ability to come to our games, park socially distant, not to have trailers, not to have tents. Does that mean someone can't get there? When we open the parking lots at 3 hours before the game, get out with the people inside their car, have a chicken drumstick and a Coca-Cola? That's not going to be a problem. What we want to not have are large mass gatherings of people that we would normally see on a beautiful fall afternoon here at Memorial Stadium. That's just not going to be able to happen in 2020.
This is Joe Gorcha from WIS. I hope this finds you doing well today. I was going to ask as a follow-up to that, will there be repercussions for fans that do not follow the guidelines. We know there's a segment of the population who probably does not take this as seriously as others. So does Clemson plan to institute a ban of a fan that refuses to comply with the guidelines in place this season?
You know, we will have our normal security running through the stadium as we have each and every year to look for people in normal circumstances who are disruptive, et cetera. We really haven't gotten to that point of, whether there's going to be potential repercussions. I think we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We hope that, much like our student athletes have learned over time, peer pressure is really good. They've learned about how to be safe in this environment. So if we need to, we will. But at this point in time, we don't have an ABC plan of what we would do as it relates to someone not wearing a mask or et cetera inside the stadium. Certainly you're allowed to take your mask off as you eat or drink. On ingress and egress to the stadium, in the concourse areas, those types of things are going to be mandatory.
Dan, with students set to come back in classes to be in person starting next month, is there anything you can learn from some of the places that have had to shut down? And what are your thoughts on if you do end up having football players playing with other students not on campus?
Well, I think part of we have learned. I think the athletic department, and particularly our football and basketball programs that were here in early June, provided an incredible live circumstance for our university as well. I mean, we had some initial positives within our football program. We've continued to test. We're at a circumstance now where we haven't had a positive test in a couple of weeks within those programs. Those students learned. They learned how important it was to follow the guidelines and protocols that were being placed in front of them. I think that as you look at the general student population, again, I say the peer pressure piece is very important, and the role modeling piece is very important. There are campuses that are experiencing some high outbreaks on their campus, but I would hope that, much like we did within our athletic program, we were able to push through that and allow our student athletes to continue to be here, go to summer school, train for the fall season. And now I think, knock on wood, we're in a pretty good situation.
Dan, it feels like we're going to get to kickoff in September at this point, although I know there are no guarantees. But how confident and optimistic are you that we're going to get an entire season in?
That's a great question. I think we continue to monitor things. It is all systems go at this point in time. We want to play. Our student athletes want to play. I think that kind of a question is best answered by the circumstances around us. We're going to continue to try to do all the things we can to keep our student athletes safe. But if we need to pivot along the way, if games need to be moved, much like you saw Virginia Tech and North Carolina State move a couple of weeks because of circumstances on their campuses, our schedule was built with some of that in mind from a football perspective. So confident that we'll be able to continue moving forward. Whether we get all 11 games in is up to something that is really out of our control. And we're just going to try to make the best of it right now as we continue to move forward towards our opening game in Winston-Salem on September 12th.
What are the plans? Go ahead.
Hey, Dan, this is Larry Williams. I know that over the summer, your athletes who were here, all of them lived off campus. Is it a case now some of them are on campus as far as their living arrangements?
Yes, Larry, they are. We have some of our student athletes. We probably have in the neighborhood of 80 to 90 student athletes who are living on campus. The remaining, and those are mostly our younger freshmen, sophomores. Many of our upper class student athletes live in the surrounding area.
Yeah, man, it's just been an awesome thing.
Dan, this is John from WSPA. What will be the fan experience as they come up to the stadium, and how is that all working with assigned times?
Well, we are working, as you know, we did a correspondence with our fan base asking of the 58,000 season tickets that we sold, how many of those individuals would like to sit out, would redshirt, so to speak, this year. And this past, the latest figures that I have are 23,000, 5,000 accounts, 23,000 tickets are looking to sit out the 2020 year. So with that number, our ticket office is now in the process of allocating the tickets to those who stayed in to opt in. Now, once we get those folks seated and in the socially distant areas within the stadium, both the lower deck and the upper north, we will then assign some gate times and individual gates for those folks to come in. We will open our gates 2 hours beforehand, but the actual walking into the stadium will be very similar to last year, moving through the metal detectors. Obviously, another big difference this year is the utilization of mobile ticketing. So when they get up to the gate, their phone or device would be scanned for entry. But we will look at specific gates based on where you're going to be seated, closest to where we can get you into your seated area, as well as some assigned times. And those will be coming after the allocation of the seating arrangements within the stadium.
What are the plans for student ticketing, and how many would be allowed in the stadium?
You know, we gave that a lot of thought, and we talked a great deal with our medical experts, our folks from AECOM, and where we landed was the students will be in the south upper deck. Those of you who are familiar with the stadium understand that the south upper deck is an isolated area. There's one way in, well, a couple of ways in and a couple of ways out, but you can't go anywhere but the south upper deck. So to keep them in their environment, we wanted to place them in an area where that would be safe. We're looking at, we had a great meeting with some student leaders earlier in the week. We're probably in the neighborhood of 22 to 2,300 student tickets. It's approximately the same percentage that they would have in a normal environment in Memorial Stadium. Now, as it relates to the Hill, the band is going to be on the Hill. And part of the reason for not putting students on the Hill and keeping them in the south upper deck is that, you know, the band kind of stays in place during the entire game, does not walk around the stadium. We didn't want to have students on the Hill because then at that point in time, they would be interacting with the fans who are in the lower deck. So given the way that the stadium is pulled together, it looked like a really great opportunity and option for us to place our students in the south upper deck. It will only be students there and put the band on the Hill.
And Dan, this is John again at WSPA. What about allocation for tickets for visiting teams, the teams coming to visit Clemson?
We finished a conversation with our ACC athletic directors the other day, and the allocation for visiting tickets is going to be at a maximum of 200. So that's basically what we're looking at traveling our player parents. There will not be a public sale for Clemson as we go to other areas for visiting tickets because they just won't be available. And that's league-wide.
Hey, Dan, it's Josh Needleman from the Post and Courier. I was just wondering what your reaction was when you found out about the Big Ten and the Pac-12 deciding not to have football this year, and is there any concern from an optics perspective about you all having games with fans in the crowd, just knowing what those two conferences will be doing?
You know, I'm sure that the Big Ten and the Pac-12, I have friends in both conferences, they have their medical experts have given them, and the ADs and their presidents, the medical advice that they've given them, and they made the decision to halt their fall activities. The medical activities that were the medical advice given by the medical advisory group that was pulled together in April by the Atlantic Coast Conference has been a little different. And Dr. Cam Wolf from Duke is the chair of that, and he's briefed both the athletic directors and the presidents. We continue to feel like this is an environment where we can have safe competition with our student athletes, as well as in some locations, depending upon the circumstances in their states, have fans to watch them. This is, I think I said it at the beginning, this is a very different year, and this probably is the one thing that highlights it the most, that some areas of the country have or some conferences have decided not to play, but the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC are continuing to move forward. And there is a large consistency between the medical protocols between all three of the conferences. For example, our student athletes in football, soccer, and volleyball will be tested 3 times a week. That will be, all three of the conferences are going to be able to do that. So we're looking to provide, as safe an environment as we can for our student athletes, and they are highly tested. I can't answer why the Big Ten or Pac-12 made those particular decisions, but I still feel very confident in the decisions we're making within the ACC.
And Joe Gorcho again from WIS. You mentioned that the student athletes will be tested vigorously 3 times a week. The fans will not have this similar access to testing. At what point would you believe it would be an untenable situation to have fans continue to come into the stadium? And would you guys be willing to pull the plug on having fans in? And how would that negatively impact the department if you could not have fans at some point this season?
Well, I think that we've taken a 75% step there right now by reducing the capacity to about a quarter of the stadium under our current circumstances. So if things change for the worse or for the better, we have the ability to pivot there. There are continued advances in testing that could down the road have a positive spin on where we are right now. But again, this is where we are today, and we've built our entire model on where we are today financially. To be able to look at the numbers that we have, given a 19,000 capacity within the stadium, that's about a $40 million overall hit as it relates to as it relates to revenues within our department. So we are in the process of making sure that if we don't have those revenues, how are we going to manage our expenses? And we've taken some steps over the last few weeks, and will continue to do so as the number continues to sharpen. Now, in your example, things went in a negative direction, and we couldn't have any fans. So that 40 some odd million dollar number may get as high as $65 million if we aren't able to have fans in the stadium. So it's a moving target, but we have a number of financial levers that we've been working on within our department to help make sure as we continue down this fall that we have the ability to pivot should circumstances change.
Dan, sorry if you've already addressed this, but how do you plan to manage the indoor spots in the stadium, like suites, boxes, west end zone, as far as availability or not?
Well, the club areas, we're looking at basically the same type of capacity number, 22-23% in those areas. Again, socially distant within the club seating that is there. As it relates to suites, maybe a slightly higher percentage as it relates to suites because of, a lot of times, the suites are occupied by family members who are together anyway, during the week. So their ability to watch that game is we would want to continue for that to be a positive experience for them. But we wouldn't be at 100% occupancy in any of those premium areas by a long shot. There will be notifications. There will be, if you've been in our suite area on the north side of the stadium, there will be signs and reminders of stay in your suite. Food consumption and delivery will be different than it has been in the past. So we're looking to make those areas as pleasant as we can, given given the circumstances that we have to work with. But they won't be at 100%, and the clubs will mirror the stadium occupancy.
And this is Jennifer with WSPA. Yesterday, the Clemson Athletics Department said that seating will be assigned in order of giving level and priority points. For those fans who are worried about being on the lower end of that, how will that be allocated game to game, or is that as a whole of the season as far as the ordering and the allocation goes for tickets?
One of the things that IPTE has done for a long time is they allocate parking, for example, by giving level and by the priority points within that level. So we're looking to do the same thing with this limited number of tickets. So depending upon your level and your number, your priority number within that level, we will look to make sure that your tickets are in line with that type of priority that our donors are very familiar with. One of the things that we tried to do, though, is we wanted to make sure that, and I think we're going to be able to accomplish this, that everyone who's at this point in time opted in will have the ability to have tickets to all or at least half of our games. So that process is ongoing right now. There's some information being sent out to our IPTE donors this morning, and it's important for us to be able to make sure, much like we've done during national championship games, this allocation methodology mirrors what we had done in high-level postseason games over the last few years. So we wanted to do something that was familiar to our fans, how that process worked, and we hope and we think we're going to be able to accomplish that everybody who stayed in after the opt-out period was complete will have access to the stadium either on a season basis or a partial season basis.
Thank you. And one more question. Oh, sorry.
No,
One more
go ahead.
Okay, I just had a quick question. When you say that you're opening the lots up 3 hours prior, but you're also discouraging tailgating, how did you come up with that number 3 hours? Is that to allocate for temperature checks and traffic, or was there a reason for that 3 hour period?
Really, it was mostly about ingress into the stadium and campus area. Even with only a quarter of the stadium being seated, it's not the easiest to get into Clemson sometimes. So we wanted to make sure that those who were traveling from a little bit of a distance had some time to get here. Again, that's where we're sitting today, 3 hours before the game, with the gates opening 2 hours before the game. So if those things need to be modified as we continue down after our first game on September 19th and our 4 home games in October, we'll certainly message that to our fans, but that's the place that we're starting.
Hey, Dan.
How about another group we haven't mentioned, the media? How's that planned to be handled this season, considering everything that's going on?
Well, we'll have a big Zoom call, David, and we'll pipe in the game. No, I'm kidding. There'll be access to the media areas. Jeff and Ross have begun to work on a seating circumstance within the stadium. You will, as you know, you're kind of isolated into that media area as it is right now. So that will continue. Post game will be done much like post practices have been over the last couple of weeks. So that's kind of our plan right now. There will be just a few. The field enclosure itself is something that the ACC has worked incredibly hard on. The field enclosure will be the participants, will be the officials, will be the chain crew. There'll be a couple of pool photographers. There'll be some security people on the field, and that's it. No spirit, no band, no. That's just the number of people who are going to be on the field are going to be very, very limited. So press box will be open. Access to teams and student athletes post game will be done as it's currently being done post practice.
Dan, I think Dabo said earlier this week the football team was going to have another round of testing Wednesday. Are you privy to the overall results of that?
Yeah, we'll be putting something out later today, as we have on most Fridays. You know, we've been pretty transparent about that. We had 622 tests this week and no positives. So in total, since we started in early June, we've given 2,134 tests, 60 total positives. And that's throughout that's not just football specifically, that's, you know, all of our student athletes, but, you know, we have the other student athletes who are here right now. So all those numbers are department-wide.
Yeah,
And
just
how's it going to work with the
earlier.
3 days a week testing in terms of when you plan to do those tests? And is that something the entire ACC is going to do? I'm imagining you guys want to try to do something on Friday, but I don't know if that's feasible at this rate.
It is. These protocols are through the ACC Medical Advisory Group. All teams who are participating have to follow those 3 tests a week procedure and protocol. We are looking at a Friday test to make sure that the results are in very early on Saturday morning from the location. So the visiting team will be tested upon arrival. The home team will take their test on Friday, so that those results would be available on Saturday. The other 2 tests normally are 48 hours after the contest, so that would be a Sunday, Monday, and then a midweek test followed by a Friday test. Those dates can vary a little based on the date and time of the game. And this goes to all of our sports, not just football.
And so all fans that requested tickets or that opted in for the season, did you say you believe that they should have access to at least half of the games? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that as we sit right now, given the allocation and number of seats that we were able to pull together, we think that that's going to be possible. And I just want to make one other point. You know, as we started this process, we didn't use 19,000 as a goal. It was a result. It was a result of how social distancing works, how our stadium is. Every stadium's a little different. That's why you see some variations between the different stadiums around the country, where their aisles are, how wide their aisles are, to be able to give that distancing. So we got to 19,000 based on the protocol of social distancing, pods of 2 seats, pods of 4 seats in some locations, and that was the result.
And talking with student leaders, were they pretty understanding of why there can be no students on the hill and in the lower deck, or what were those conversations like?
Yeah, they were. I mean, certainly I give a lot of credit to our students here at Clemson. They understand that they want to have a great student experience. They understand it's going to be different in all phases of their experience this coming fall. But when we talk to them about the why, the ability to keep them safe, they understood. And I think that this gives us some opportunities to work with our Student Affairs Office. Vice President Chris Miller was on the call that we had, and do some unique things up on the Upper South Concourse that will be inhabited just by the students.
Dan, across, I guess, all of your athletes who have tested positive in the past, have there been any fears at all of myocarditis or any heart issues thus far?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, back in late June is probably the first time I had heard about the studies that had those types of heart issues with viruses, not just COVID-19. So our doctors, again, through some consultation with the ACC Medical Advisory Group, we've been doing some EKGs, echocardiograms, some of those processes as early as back in June to allow student athletes to come back to, at that point in time, training. Now it's gotten to be a little bit more of a protocol associated with that. and we'll certainly follow that. But up to this point in time, we have not had any issues associated with myocarditis.
Hey, Dan, this is David with ESPN. This is a little bit off topic, but I know the ACC announced yesterday their search committee for the next commissioner. I'm just curious, in your mind, if there's specific character traits or skill sets that you would like to see in the next league commissioner, and I'll put you on the spot and ask if that would be a job you'd have any interest in.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll certainly try to give you a good answer to the first one. I think that what we need to do as it relates to our league, we're geographically just spread out. But over the last, I think, 5 months of this pandemic, when our athletic directors have been on Zoom calls and other types of communications twice, 3 times a week, I think we've become very close as a league and understanding different schools' ideologies and where they sit on certain issues. So I think as in any good leader, the bar continues to move as it relates to communication. So I think communicating with the league, with the individual schools within the league, being there, going to their campuses, understanding how those campuses work, will give you a great understanding of how you can then move the league forward. Certainly, the big bogey that's out there for the league is trying to understand how we can create additional revenue for our members. That's first and foremost. And we have a television contract that's in force, but how do we look to make that better? And how do we create other revenue streams within the league that helps our membership and has that trickle down to our student athletes? It's an interesting job, but I have to tell you, I have a great job here. I enjoy the staff, the coaches, the student athlete, the community. So it's going to be a great job as it gets filled. And I know that the search firm will do a wonderful job and our presidents will make a great decision.
Hey, Dan, it's Phil Kornblut. Will the plan still be for the players to board the buses and ride around the stadium, run down the hill? Will that be part of the pregame?
Yes, that is still part of the process, because it takes the student athletes from one part of the field enclosure to the other in a closed environment, and that part of our tradition will stay in place.
Hey, Dan, this is Alan with WYFF. Talk to me a little bit. You guys already mentioned how you're going to be doing this pod kind of seating. I know you have a lot of things to kind of work out. When it comes down to pod seating, groups of 2, groups of 4, whatever it may be, what is that going to look like for students, for families, for ticket holders in general?
Well, I think, we're going to, based on the level of giving that people have, they'll have access to either 4 or 2 tickets for the most part. So students will be, again, we're going to try to set up the south upper deck with areas marking the seats where they can sit, where they can't sit, so that there's some direction for them. In the lower decks of the stadium, we're going to look to set up the chairback seats that you see people normally rent. We're going to look to put those up there to designate where the seating areas are. So hopefully that answers your question. It's going to be different. People will probably not be, I think it'll be highly, highly unlikely that, regardless of where you sit in the lower deck or the upper deck of the stadium, that you will be in your same seat that you've had for years and years and years. You may be a section or 2 over, a little higher, a little lower, but it'll be a different environment and a different view for 2020.
Will students be following the same social distancing guidelines?
Yes.
Dan, the contact tracing ramifications and complications are obviously a really big hurdle for these teams. How are y'all monitoring that per team? Is it the medical staff that's in charge of sort of sorting all that out, and just how is that working?
Absolutely, and Our associate AD, Natalie Honan, our two team doctors, Len Reeves and Tenley Murphy, along with Danny Poole, who's the trainer for our football program, and his staff of trainers with our Olympic sports, are charged with that. We've had some great conversations with Dr. Jean Hong of MUSC as it relates to, how we are focusing on not only the testing protocols and making sure that those are done in adherence with ACC guidance, but how we're doing the contact tracing as well. So you're right. Contact tracing is an incredibly difficult variable, but I will tell you that contact tracing doesn't come into play unless there's a positive. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been in a really good circumstance of not having any positives for which we had to go into the process of understanding the contact tracing for those individual student athletes.
Take one or two more. All right. If nothing else, then we thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Stay safe. Hope to see you whenever we get together on September 19th. Thank you.
Thank